Andee, welcome to Millionaire University. I was stoked when I saw you on my schedule today because I had the honor and privilege of coming on your show. I don't know, a few weeks ago. It could have been like 2 months ago. I don't know. Time is weird.
Yes.
Anyway, I'm so happy to have you here today. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you so much. What a joy to be here. It is such an honor.
Yeah, your smile has stayed in my memory, just so you know. Like, I hope you understand that you have a beautiful smile. And anytime I thought about or saw your name, I immediately saw your smiling face. So,
Oh, thank you. Thank you
yeah.
so much. That means so much.
Well,
Yes.
it's true. So guys, if you're listening and you want to see what I'm talking about, we'll have this episode on YouTube as well, assuming we have no visual problems. Um anyway, so
Yes.
yeah, I've given a formal intro on the podcast before we started chatting, but you do have your own show like we mentioned I came on called She Sells Differently. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today and how we can shift from maybe the things that female entrepreneurs specifically are getting wrong or doing that they need to shift a little bit so they can sell differently in a way that is more in alignment, having more success with that. So, why don't we start with a little bit of your history and how you even got to this point? I know when I was on your show, you said you've only barely been at this like a year. So you've kind of shifted out of the corporate world. So give us your coming of age story, if you will.
Yes. Well, I've only been a business owner, an entrepreneur for a year and a half. I have been in sales for over 18 years.
Mm,
So, whenever someone hears the word sales, we always joke that it's like that dirty word that everyone cringes when they hear about it. And I'm that nerd that really loves sales. And I never set off to college to go into sales, but I got a sales job my senior year in at university and started in technology sales right after I graduated and spent 17 years working for two different Fortune 500 tech companies, worked my way up to be a global sales director and left that a year and a half ago. And it's not that I hated what I was doing. I actually loved it. I just felt that I was called for something more. I felt, the Lord was just calling me to do something more with the gifts that He had given me.
mm,
And I think a lot of that is because so many, especially us as women entrepreneurs, we cringe when we hear the word sales. And the reality is that we're selling something every day. And when we have a gift or a value, whether it be a product or a service that brings value to others, we owe it to the world to share about it.
mm.
And so we can do that in a way that aligns with our values, in a way that aligns with who we are, our character, our integrity. And it can be done in a way that feels comfortable and brings us joy when we learn how to do that well
Mm.
and we'll learn how to serve others well.
Amazing. So your platform really is essentially helping women specifically to be able to do that. And so I'm sure that in all of those 18 years in sales, you've seen that there are different ways that men and women approach sales. So we're not here to alienate the men. Like you might
Yes,
find
yes.
some value in listening to this and learning a little more of maybe your feminine approach or some things we can take from the ladies, but kind of give us a little bit of understanding of why that needs to be different or what you kind of observed in those years in sales that, and I know this is a loaded question. This will really
Yeah.
frame the entire conversation. So yeah, maybe let's start with something more specific. What is the most surprising sales mistake that you see women entrepreneurs consistently make?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that in and of itself, I could talk for hours about. So first off, let me address this. Some of the best salespeople I have seen are men, right?
Hmm.
And so we're not alienating the men, and I work with a lot of men too. I think that it is often um, women just struggle with it sometimes more. And men do too, right? But I think naturally, who God created us to be, we want to give away our services more. And
Hmm.
so I cringe when I see that because when we have a great product or service, it's okay to charge for it. It's okay to sell it, right? And so I just want to start by saying that it is okay to charge and it is okay to sell. And I don't know why women just have a harder time with that.
Mm.
So I think that may be, to answer your second question, one of the biggest mistakes I see is that we tend to discount and give away our value,
Mm.
right? And the consumer behavior, consumer mindset is that when you have a lower price, whether you're selling a product or a service, a lower price does not always mean that you're going to sell more. On the flip side, it actually can translate into lower quality for your customer in their
Mhm.
mindset. And so, more often than not, the mindset of your customer, your potential customer, is going to think, this is a lower price. What about what you're selling is a lower quality and is not going to meet my needs? And they're willing to pay more for better quality, better product.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Well, and I wanna talk a little bit about the psychology of this and why you think that women do have a harder time, and why are we so inclined to wanna give things away? Is it just that natural giving and nurturing that we have, and what do you think it is about men that can kind of emotionally not take so much, I don't know, so much emotional weight in selling? And I think maybe there's a piece of, like, validation in there, acceptance, I don't know. Are we all just girls who are healing from middle school who don't wanna rock the boat?
Naturally, women are nurturers, right? We are created to give birth. We're created to be mothers, and so and I'm not trying to just do a blanket statement, but that is in our DNA. Like we are
Mhm.
nurturers, and so we want to give, we want to serve, and so I just see it across the board in that we are more empathetic in general. And so when we see someone struggling with a problem, and this is once again, not to say that men don't have these qualities too. So I want to be very, very careful in saying that. But
Mhm.
when we see someone that is struggling, um, we naturally are going to give something away to help.
Mhm.
And so I am always very careful to say to women, you don't have to always give your things away. There is a time and a place to use your gifts and your skills to serve, right? And then there's a time and a place to sell. And
Mm.
so we just so often I see women, they're just give, 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 give. And then they go out of business and they can't give anymore because they don't have a business, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And so we are called to use our skills to create a life and to um you know have a business and to serve our families well through our businesses.
Mhm.
So that is a gift from God that we have.
Yeah. Okay, so I know that a huge component of sales is not just like go make the hard sell. Just go get out there and tell what you have, that there has to be some kind of relationship and trust built. So, in your opinion, like what's the difference between building relationships, relationship selling, and like being too nice in sales?
Oh, yeah, so good. So I always say, you start by just genuinely being who you are, and that can just be asking questions. So I like to do this by just connecting with people, and this is just something that I would do in the first place, and that's asking questions. And I want to say this too. By asking questions, you are also trying to figure out if the product or service that you have will help the other person because it
Mm.
may not. And a confident business owner will be able to walk away and or point the customer to someone that can best help them. And I'm going to say that again because traditional sales coaching, traditional sales, models will say overcome every objection. And I
Mhm.
think that's where we get that icky sales mentality from. Overcome every objection. You hear the word no, and how do you overcome that?
Mm.
Right? Now, I'm not saying that you don't want to overcome the word no if you know that the product you have will help them, but you need to be so confident in your product. You're also trying to figure out first if you can help them.
Mhm.
And so you ask those questions. And I cannot tell you how many times that I've actually had customers come to me and they actually want my product and they're ready to buy. And slow them up and say, let me ask a couple questions, and
Mm,
come to find out, hey, my course is not the right fit for you. Let me point you to someone that can help better. Because if I sold them my course, they're going to have a bad experience, right?
mhm,
And it's not going to serve them well. And at the end of the day, they're like, wow, thanks, you know?
mhm,
And so as a result of that, maybe a year down the road, they were ready, or, they've come back and purchased, or they've recommended me to someone else. But that is, to me, being kind. There's a difference between being nice and kind.
mhm,
That is being kind and truly serving your audience. And it's because I got to know them by truly asking the right questions. And when you ask those questions up front, then I can determine what we call qualifying in sales. I can determine, is the product or service that I have going to meet their needs?
mm,
And if it's no, I can help serve them best by pointing them somewhere else. If it's yes, then by the information I got, then I can, in a tactful way that is not being pushy, help them self identify and point out, this is why this is the right product or service for you.
mhm. Yeah. That requires a lot of I think you mentioned the word confidence. It really does. Like, we can't just go in there with guns blazing, our own agenda in mind and our own numbers in our mind. I think it's really important. I would love your take on this. Is that part of the thing that we need to be aware of is going in there with like our sales goal in the back of our mind and looking at them as a number and looking at this as like another thing we need to close versus a human being. And like, how does that change the conversation when you're thinking about that? And where is the time and place for that? Because we are running a business, we wanna be thoughtful, and I think sometimes it can feel confusing because you're like, "Oh, how am I supposed to manage both? I have my own goals and my own
Yeah.
expectations, and I wanna serve. Where's the intersection? How do I treat these relationships that I'm building without being pushy, but also not pushing myself over in the process?"
It requires a lot of faith over fear, and just confidence in who you are. And I learned this early on in my sales career because I'm working for a big corporation, and we have a sales quota to hit. And I remember having a boss that was challenging me on why I was not pitching a customer, a $300,000 solution instead of, the $150,000 solution that was a better fit for them.
Mm,
That my engineer, who was, my right-hand guy, and we were pitching this solution, and our boss was just hitting us over the head. And we stood by our solution because it was a better fit. And yes, we could have, closed the gap on our quota a lot more with a higher end solution, but it wasn't the right thing for the customer. And
mhm,
we knew that. And by standing by, and selling with integrity and value and getting to know the customer, I knew that we were doing the right thing. And we ended up winning that deal and having a customer for life. And that really struck me. And I carried that for a long time. I mean, to this day. And I had to defy what my boss was telling me.
mhm,
My boss was wanting me to oversell them. And I think that is something that I really struggled with a lot in corporate sales. Now, not all of my bosses were like that, but that is just such the mentality so often in the sales environment. You just want to wring out every penny that you can out of people instead of actually getting to know them and serving them and finding out what is best for them.
mhm,
And what I have found out in the long run is that that will come back tenfold for you if you're
mhm.
really focused on being kind and loving people well and serving them instead of just looking out for yourself.
Yeah. So you brought up something a couple times, and that's asking questions, getting to know them. I know this is obviously going to vary in subject matter based on the conversation and what you're selling, but do you have any feedback or tips for us on how you even go about doing that? Because I know sometimes a challenge can be you know your thing so well, right? Like you have the answer, you
Yeah.
have the solution. So how do you frame that conversation and truly ask questions to give you insight, and where do you go about knowing which questions to ask?
Yeah. So this could vary, obviously, depending on what you're selling. So I have gone from selling multi-million dollar complex technology solutions when I was working in corporate to selling candles at a market, right?
Mhm.
So you can't, get more complex to simple. So let's just take if, you're a product maker and you're selling candles at a market and what that looks like. And so that could simply look like engaging in conversation to ask someone. And I generally like to ask um, early on, like if someone came in my retail store when I lived in North Carolina, I had a retail store, and I would say, "Have you been into Heart Design Co. before?" And so it was a simple yes or no answer, no pressure. And by that one question, I could gauge my customer if they were
Mm,
open to talking to me or not. I
mhm.
could engage their body language. I could engage their tone of voice. And so that immediately to me told if they wanted to just be left alone and shop or if they wanted to talk to me. And it was usually if they answered yes or no, or if they expounded on the answer.
Yeah.
And so if they continued to talk, then I would just ask them, maybe what brought them in today or tell a little bit about the history of how we got started, something that maybe pertain and they would find to them and they would find interesting. And usually it just leads to them asking questions of me and just a natural dialogue conversation that you would have with anyone out on the street, right?
Mhm.
And often they're going to tell you why they're in there. They're there to buy a birthday gift. They're there to find some home decor, and you can lead them to exactly what they're looking for. It's going to be a natural conversation. Now, if they just say, "No, I've never been in before," you can simply say, "Welcome in," and kind of give like a short, "We're a candle store, and let me know if you need anything." Right?
Mhm. Yeah.
That is kinder to them and then, anything you can do because they want to be left alone. And then maybe check in with them in a few minutes. But I like to do that and just to kind of gauge their reaction. And then in a few minutes, you could just kind of say, "Here's one of our best selling candles if you would like to smell it,"
Mm.
you know? And sometimes I'll drop a hint. This makes a really great, housewarming present if you ever need anything. And leave
Yeah.
it at that. Drop those like mental hints in there and they're like, "Oh, I didn't think about that." Okay.
Mhm.
So those are just some like easy tactics for like product-based businesses or if like you're a boutique owner or retail shop um that I've used in the past. Now, obviously that's going to differ if you're like in a sales job, but it's just simply engaging with people and asking what brought them in
Mhm.
and what their needs are.
Yeah. Well, and it's so funny hearing you say that because I think to all these different like sales engagements I've had, and I know the ones that I've liked, and I know the ones that I haven't liked. And there's times when people, I'm almost like, sell to me. Like I'm almost having to sell to myself because they are
Yeah.
so disengaged. And then there's other times it's like, okay, calm down, calm your, what is your quota for the month that you're trying to meet because
Right?
you're not hearing me. So I think it's like, yeah, and it's finding that sweet spot for yourself and the client. It's not even so much that you have this one size fits all conversation or strategy. It's really meeting people and knowing where they are and needing to ask questions to figure out where they are. Like you doing
Yeah.
that kind of a temperature check on you're in here, how are you feeling? Like what kind of energy are we going to exchange today and then letting that guide things. I think that's really helpful. So you may not have this set prescribed set of questions, but it's really just like go back to human interaction. Like how can you connect with people? We always think of like the car salesman and I feel bad. I have some friends who are car salesmen
Right?
and they get the worst reputation, but at the end of the day like they're asking so many questions to figure out what you want, why you want it, what you need. And I think at least there's clarification and I think that's the key also, right? To selling is getting clarity. So like you mentioned, you're telling someone this actually isn't a good fit for you. I've been in that situation where I'm having a sales conversation and I'm talking them out of my service because I'm like, "You're not ready for this." And so let's talk about that a little bit too to have the confidence, but even I've had guests on here who have said the benefit to having a lot of money in the bank account is you can choose who you wanna work with and you're not just trying to capture every sale. So, let's talk through that a little bit of what internally needs to be going on for you to feel really confident and not feeling like everybody is a potential and you have to close every single customer.
Even if you don't, even if you are just starting out,
Mhm.
because I went from a corporate sales job, from global sales director for a Fortune 500 to out starting on my own, right? I
Mhm.
mean, that was a major jump. So you better believe there was a lot of fear for
Mhm.
me. And I felt that. There were times where I felt that. And, it was hard for me to tell that person, hey, I can't help you. And I think a lot of that was from my experience in the past and knowing that this is the right thing to do.
Mhm.
But it also is knowing the work that you're going to have to do on the back end when you're selling something or a product or a service that isn't the right fit is
Mhm.
going to be tenfold. It's going to be tenfold if it's not the right fit.
Mhm.
If it's a customer sat issue or, um, a return or something like that. And so I have just seen that time and time again. If it's not a right fit for someone, you have 10 times the work on the back end because of a unsatisfied customer,
Mhm.
dissatisfied customer. And so that always sticks in my mind. And I want to create a base of customers that are raving fans.
Mhm.
And generally, if I'm pointing them in a different direction, they're either going to recommend me or they're going to come back later when it is the right fit.
Yeah. So for me, I'll just share a little bit of like I think what my limiting beliefs or fears have been when it comes to selling, and it'll even hold me back from doing the thing that I really wanna do or, like, being in alignment, and it's because I feel like I don't know where this came from, but it's this belief that I have to convince people, and what I think that I'm understanding more now, so after years and years of doing this, and it should have been very obvious because 'cause there's been plenty of times when I've sold where it's been very effortless and I'm not having to convince anybody of
Yeah.
anything, you know? But what do you feel like, what are some of your tips on that with understanding kind of what I mentioned before, where are they? Take a temperature. But as you're facilitating this, as you're putting things out there, I mean, even having the candle store, having the interior store, like people came through your door. So you're not having to convince them. You're not out there with like the flipping sign to say, come in here,
Right.
you know? But like, can we talk about that different stages of like understanding where you need to sell in certain ways depending on where they're at in the journey? And maybe just like there's times when that's not even your job is to sell to them, it's to do something else.
Yeah. So I actually did a whole series on, well, it wasn't a series, but I did a whole episode on the 4 types of buyers.
Mm.
And I think this takes, and this goes back to, asking the right questions, but this takes some awareness and definitely takes some studying to understand the different types of buyers out there, whether you're selling products or services online or in person. And so I think it's important to kind of understand those different types of buyers and the personalities that go with those. And it's funny because when you talk through them, you actually can kind of like recognize people in your lives or even like your own self, what type of buyer you are. And
Mhm.
so I think that's actually really, really helpful to be aware of when you're selling. The first one is the analytical, and I love this because I always joke that it is like this is like my dad, because he's actually the one that will spend more time, um, like researching and deciding what he's going to buy. And the funny thing is that um, he will actually spend more money on a product.
Hmm.
And so I think that that's interesting because that goes back to like talking about that we often like we'll slash our prices, right?
Mhm.
And he will spend more money on a product, but he wants it to be quality and he's going to research the quality. And so that is the analytical buyer that's going to spend the time researching. Then you have the person that's just ready to make the purchase. So that is the person that's going to come in. They know exactly what they want. They don't want to spend time talking. And they are just ready to like they probably are not even going to like do any research. They're just like I know what I want. Like I'm ready to go. I'm like ready to make a purchase right now. Don't even talk to me. Don't educate me. And
Mhm.
those, if you are a course creator or a service provider, um, they are the ones that if you have a closed door, they're going to struggle, right? Like a
Mhm.
closed door membership, closed door course, because they want to be able to purchase when they want to purchase.
Mhm.
And so I find that interesting. I remember I had a marketing professor when I was in university, and this blew my mind, but he's the example that I always use when I talk about this type of buyer. He is the one that I remember him telling us that he went to Little Rock one day and he was buying he wasn't even in the mood to buy a car, but he saw a car on a car lot, didn't test drive, didn't do anything, just said, I'm going to buy it, go write the paperwork. What? Like, so that is like the type of buyer that is, they are the decision maker, like the assertive. They are like they're going to just like they're efficient results, like they are in control. So they make fast decisions. That's the assertive buyer. So you have the analytical buyer, the researcher, they care about the quality, they want the detailed information. You have the assertive, the very decision, like they're going to be efficient, get in, get out.
Mhm.
Then you have the emotional buyer. So that is like the feeler, and they want the product to like connect to them. They want to be inspired by it. And they can often buy impulsively, but they want it to like paint this picture of like how it's going to like their life, after like the transformation
Yeah.
and what life is going to, be like with that product. So if you have ever worried like you're too soft in your sales messaging, this is probably like the buyer that you're going to connect with. Like leaning into like the heart and the emotions of your
Mm.
sales messaging. That's the emotional buyer. They're the feeler, you know.
Yeah.
And then you have the social buyer. So the social buyer is the one that cares about all the trends. They care about the social proof. They care about being a part of something and the community. They're influenced by those reviews, and they love like the community aspect. Like if you have like user generated content on like social media that like influencers have created, and seeing what others are buying, that is the social buyer. They're going to buy
Mm.
like the latest trend, and that is the experience that they want.
Mm.
So those are your four different types of buyers. And it's really helpful to see and know these types of buyers and to kind of quickly, you can usually gauge when you meet someone pretty quickly just by asking questions what kind of buyer they are. Are they analytical, emotional? Are they the quick decision maker? They're assertive, or are they the social buyer? Like if they come in and they say, "Hey, I saw this on TikTok and these really cute earrings everyone's wearing," they're a social buyer, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So if they come in and they say, I've been researching this, and they're probably an analytical buyer. And so the other important piece of that, if you are writing your sales copy and you are selling online and you're writing a sales page for a course or coaching or a mastermind that you're selling, it's important in your sales copy on your sales page to
Mm.
hit all four of these in your sales copy. And so no matter what you're selling or how you're selling in person, on the phone, if you're selling, in your copywriting, in your email, or however that looks like, you need to make sure that if you're selling one-on-one or, in writing, that you are quickly engaging each of these type of buyers or identifying, if you're one-on-one, what type of buyer that you're working with
Mhm.
so that you can get to the heart of the matter and address their needs and their type of buying behavior.
Yeah. Ooh, really important to know. So, and do you feel like people can be a blend of some of them too, where like that might kind of shift and change as you're in conversation with them? And I know you mentioned you should address and hit on all of these in your sales copy, but even in
Yeah,
humans, like we're not one dimensional. They're likely to have a couple of these manifesting at the same time.
I'm absolutely a blend. Like when I think of my own self, I can be a social buyer. Like I like the trends, but I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to do the research.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do my research. Like I would love to go purchase, a Louis Vuitton purse, but I'm going to go do the research.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so you can absolutely be a blend.
Hmm.
And I think
Okay.
it depends on the scenario too.
Yeah. Okay, let's go back to the money conversation a little bit. I love that. A little more. I love the psychology. I love understanding buyer types and all of that. That was really helpful. But I want to talk a little bit about like maybe specifically women, but all of us struggle with this a little bit of times with pricing and not undercutting ourselves, underselling ourselves. What are some of the things? I mean, we know we see that as a problem. What are some of the tips or strategies you have to help us overcome that?
Yes. So first I would say it's always good to get feedback, and not just feedback from family and friends because they're going to say, you know, you should charge $100 for this when it may should be $50 depending on, I'm just giving an example. So get feedback from the market, from current customers. That's something that I have done before. I have done like a post course survey and done it anonymously to ask about the value that they felt that they received. And it was actually eye opening for one of my first courses. They actually said that they received more value than what they were charged.
Mm,
And so I realized I should be charging more. And so that's something that's very helpful. Something else that you can do is market research. So just simply doing a Google search of finding something, whether, products or services of competitors in your specific niche or your industry and what they're charging. And it doesn't mean that you need to charge the exact amount that they're charging, but you should be somewhere around that wheelhouse, right?
mm-hmm.
Unless you are providing significantly more value, then that should be around about what you're charging. So if you're charging significantly less, then that's probably a key indicator that you're well undercharging and the consumer mindset is, for your target audience is going to think, what about their course or
Mm,
their product is missing? What's
yeah.
missing or what's making it less than?
Mm. Okay, I love that. So having the research ahead of time, what about when it comes down to that moment where you are in the middle of the pitch, what have you, and you're feeling that like discomfort or somebody's asked you to discount your pricing or because I know women might be a little more likely to want to, make it comfortable. I think men can sit in discomfort in a different way than women can. So what do you recommend when you're in that moment and you just want to cave or you just want to be like, you know what, this is a mistake. You can have it for free.
Yeah, so that's great. I always recommend asking for a something in return. So if someone is going to ask for a discount, so let's say, it is you're at a market selling your products and they may say, I would, would you take, you're selling your candles for let's just say $30 and they say, would you take 25? And I might in return say, I'll sell you two for 25. So what you've just done there is you've increased your average order value. And instead of just selling one for 25, you have met them where they are, but they're buying two for 25.
Mm.
Make sense?
Or 50, right? Like total 50,
Oh, yeah,
not
right,
two.
right, exactly. So thank you. So two for 50.
Mhm.
So they have to, increase their, you're increasing your average order value. So
Yeah.
you're making an order for $50 instead of just 25. And so it's
Mhm.
kind of a this for that. Like, I'll meet you there. I'm not just saying no, I'll meet you there. But you need to do this for me. Right. And I
Mhm.
think that that is showing some reciprocity from like a course creator standpoint. I have had some of that. Not, you don't see that as much.
Mhm.
But I will generally kind of dig in and see like what's going on there. And so if it is a situation where, like affordability, maybe I'll offer a payment plan, or maybe I'll offer like an additional coaching session or something like that. So there's always a way to create additional value, but I also want to honor my students that have paid at that level.
Mm.
And so I will always make sure that it is honorable and that it is something I'm not just giving a discount for discount's sake,
Mhm.
but that I'm providing value to
Yeah.
them.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I love that. I think and a lot of this that I'm hearing is really gonna be chalked up to preparation, right? Not like finding yourself in a situation where you haven't even thought through that. So I know we mentioned early on, we're not just here to knock down every objection and feel gross, but you do need to know what the objections might be. You do need to kind of think through and this will come with practice. We're not saying sit down and plan for everything before you're even willing to make that first sales call or have that first conversation. But I think gathering that and you become stronger and smarter and you're more aware of, okay, this is typically what people are saying. And so I need to be prepared to address that, not so I'm convincing, but because I need to understand, like, well, what is my approach to that? Or what
Yeah.
is going to be my response if somebody asks for a discount or asks for me to give a little bit more in terms of value than they initially were going to get for that price or,
Yeah.
things like that. Cause I think that preparation will help with the confidence when you're in the moment, correct?
Yes. Let me give you a specific example that just happened to me like a month ago. So I had a course and someone that had been wanting to buy my course, and it was, I believe, like $8.97. And I had told her the price is going up because I'm adding some significant pieces to the course. And she had sat on it and did not move. And so finally, the price had gone up. She emailed me and said, I see the price has now gone up. Can I still get it for $8.97? And it had only gone up $100. So instead of giving her the $8.97 price, I told her, no, the price is now $9.97 because I want to honor everyone else that is now paying the $9.97 price. But what you do get now is you can get the bonus that I just offered. And so I had just closed the bonus, but I chose to honor the bonus for her.
Mm.
But I did give her a time limit. I said, if you do act on it now, I will reopen this bonus for you. And she did. And she did. And so instead of just giving her the $100 discount, I chose to meet her where she was and give her an additional value add.
Mm.
And so in terms of, I want people to, if what they hear from this is, don't just think discount, think how can you increase the value of your offer to make it enticing for the customer.
Mm. Yep. Do you do when you're coaching and in your community and everything, do you help people with cold outreach selling? And what is your opinion on that? Like are you mostly focusing on, warm leads coming in, attraction content, things like that, or do you feel like there's a good strategic way to do cold outreach?
Yes. So I do this primarily for my product sellers that I teach in my wholesale course. And I do this, and I think this can translate into whatever you're selling, even if you are, uh, selling services or a course. But I teach how to find retailers that they want to pitch their products to, and they want these boutiques to carry their products in their retail shelves, right? And how to identify them and to vet them, and then how a simple formula, I actually call it the simple formula. And so instead of doing like a mass outreach, because no one's going to respond to a mass email, right? That's
Mhm.
gone to a bunch of boutiques, but how to reach out to them and to find something that they can connect with them on that's very personal. And then how to incentivize them, offer an incentive for them to place their first wholesale order. And you can do this if it's, a service or a course. So offer a hook or an incentive for them to purchase within the next, week or whatever that looks like. And then make the ordering or the purchase process very easy.
Mm,
I always say, make working with you really easy. Don't make them go hunt for the link. Don't make them go hunt. Don't even make them get up to go get their credit card. Like
mhm.
the PayPal link right there,
Yeah.
Um, and then even make your contact info very, very clear. And then from a cold outreach perspective, here's the thing that most people make. Here's the mistake that most people make. 90% of people make. 90% is they will never follow up.
Mm,
So you can literally be in the top 10% of people and set yourself apart if you just send a second follow-up email,
hmm.
which is
Yeah, I'm
significant.
I'm guilty of that, definitely at times. I was talking to my coach the other day and she was like, "Okay, so what's your next step with this and this?" And I said, "Yeah, that was actually a really good opportunity and I haven't followed up." And this can apply like on one-on-one conversations. This can apply to like having a whole list of people who opted in on something and then not following up, not having that, that
Yeah.
very simple touch point that could make you a lot of money and help you to serve those people. And I think for me sometimes you can get in your little box of feeling like nobody wants this, and then you have to recognize, I'm not even offering this. Like, I wasn't even willing to have more than one conversation. Maybe I need to be more intentional about that. So that's fascinating to hear. 90% of people are going to miss out on sales because they just don't want to be annoying or they forget
Yeah.
or they don't prioritize the follow up. So it's pretty important.
Yeah. And you think about it, like often when we're doing like our email marketing and we're focusing on nurturing, nurturing, nurturing. And I always liken it to I'm actually going um, shopping with my sister-in-law tomorrow, and we're going to shop for houseplants.
Mm,
And I want you to think about, if you went shopping and you went to a nursery, and houseplants are one of those things that you kind of need to be educated about, and you want someone to kind of talk you through that. But what if they never led you to the cash register? What if they never offered to actually sell you a houseplant?
mm-hmm.
How annoying would that be? You're like, I have my credit card. Like, I want to buy that and take it home and use it. And that's the same thing, you know, when you are in business. And it's great to educate and it's great to talk to people and this whole sales process, right? But
Yeah.
make the offer, ask for the sale, right? And so you have buyers out there, whatever of those four types of buyers they are. And sometimes there are those types of buyers that simply need you to say, I would love to work with you. Here's
Mm-hmm.
how you can work with me,
Yeah.
and lead them to the cash register,
Mm-hmm. It's
whatever that looks
it's
like. Yeah.
It's not that difficult. I love the phrase, like, it's not easy, but it's simple. And sometimes we don't do the simple things because, I don't know,
Yeah.
laziness, fear, what have you, but I love that, and it's good. It's a good last thought to leave everybody with when it comes to selling, like, make sure you're actually selling, that you're gonna do all that work to create the product, figure out the offer, have the conversations, and it's just like one final conversation can make or break
Yeah.
the success of your business, so don't be afraid to have that one. Andy, you are such a delight. I've loved talking to you. Thank you for sharing all the insight you have with sales, buyer types, psychology, strategy. All of the things have been so helpful. Where can people connect with you off this episode?
Yes, and my website is andeehart.com. It's ANDEE, a little different, ANDEEHART.com. And then that is my Instagram as well, if you would love to follow me
Oh,
there.
awesome. I do, and I will do a little plug too. Andy was so kind to send me a candle after I was on her podcast. As you were talking about that, it reminded me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I should have said thank you initially when we started talking, but I love that. So nice. It smells delicious, and you are an amazing entrepreneur. Love hearing all of the things that you have done. So be sure to definitely go follow her. Thanks again, Andy. It's been such a pleasure.
Thanks for having me, Kirsten. What an
Of
honor.
course. Yeah.